Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton here with Tsiakalis-Brown, the creator of the Vertigo games and a very young developer with a very interesting story, developing from age 13, I think you said, with the
hmm
DK1 and all the way through to today with several VR games under your belt now. And I wanted to really unfold that journey with you because you've brought us a new trailer today for a new project coming out. I won't say anything more about that right now. Let's tease it to the very last second. But I wanted to cover this journey because I think there's a lot people out there can learn from what you've done. So number one, why is your avatar so strange? And then tell me about how you got started in VR development.
I made this avatar because I'm not a huge fan of the designs of the Horizon avatars in the first place. So I just wanted to lean into the uncanniness and make one that's really weird looking. And I was kind of disappointed. It didn't let me go as crazy as I wanted to either. Lots of games you can really go out there, but this was the best I could do when it came to hideous meta avatars.
I love it. All right. So tell me about the experience of getting your first VR headset. When was it and what was that headset and what did you do with it?
Yeah, so my first headset was an Oculus DK1. My dad brought it home. I don't even know why he got it. He's, been in the tech industry for decades and decades, so I'm sure he had some connections there. But I got to play with it. I got to do the original Tuscany demo. I remember vividly. It was the first thing I did in it. Probably many people's first VR experience. I was instantly hooked, and I wanted to start making games for it. So I started learning Unity, and Vertigo was one of my first projects, really. It kind of just snowballed into a bigger and bigger game. And then, here we are with Vertigo 2.
And you also did a remastered version of Vertigo
Mhm.
1. Why did you make that decision to go back and update it?
Yeah, so the original Vertigo one I published when I was like 16, and it was very clearly like a 16-year-old's VR game. It had a lot of bugs. I put it together in just like a year. There were a lot of things that I just wasn't happy with, and I didn't think it was my best work. So I took all the work that I was doing with Vertigo 2, with new like weapon physics, hand animations, all this stuff that was in the works for Vertigo 2, and I just backport it to Vertigo 1. I made a much more polished version of Vertigo 1, and I was able to get that done in just a couple months, and it made it a much more polished and complete game, I feel like.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you do almost everything. Explain to me all the disciplines you're learning or have learned already.
Mhm.
And do I'll leave. That's enough. I'll get a follow-up question after that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I do most everything by myself. I do all the coding, most of the 3D modeling and artwork, all the music I do myself, lots of sound design and animation. I'm really passionate about all these different fields, and game development is like perfect for me because it lets me do all of them professionally and have them all come together and contribute to a single work of art. So it's really it's perfect, and it gives me so much fulfillment.
So I've got you in a Quest headset, and your games
Mhm.
are not on Quest headsets. Can you talk to me about that decision and how you think about that? Why did you make that choice?
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm a big PC VR fan. I like the processing power of PCs, being able to push graphics and like complicated gameplay a lot further. A lot of people don't like the cable, and that's valid. It would be nice if PC VR headsets didn't have the cable, but I don't know. I like the power of the PC. I'm a big like graphics guy. I like working on fancy graphics, so that's probably the biggest factor there.
And how does that relate to the games you play? What games do you like to play yourself, and do they reflect what you create? So I guess talk to me about inspirations.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't play a lot of VR games in my spare time, probably because I, spend all my working hours in a headset. I want to, relax my eyes a little bit by staring at a normal screen instead. So I mostly play pancake games. The obvious inspirations are definitely there, like Portal 2, Half-Life. Um, I didn't play Half-Life until after I made Vertigo 1, which is crazy because there's so much crossover in themes. I guess it kind of just percolated through culture and influenced it indirectly. All of Valve's games are a huge inspiration. Let's see. The new Doom games are some of my favorites as well. I really like how they're kind of reimagining the classic first person shooters into a modern setting with modern graphics. because that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Vertigo too. It's a revival of the old-fashioned first-person shooter.
Am I right that you worked with Valve as well directly in
Hmm.
some capacity? Can you walk through how that relationship happened?
Yeah. I was a contractor at Valve for several years. The biggest things I worked on were Moondust, which was a tech demo for the Valve Index controllers. And that was mostly just for developers to show the features of the controllers. I also worked on the lab. I updated the lab to have finger tracking, also for the Index, and did a bunch of other modernizations to that as well. And I worked on some other stuff that I can't really talk about. But yeah, it was a
Ooh,
really fun time at Valve. It was
awesome.
a huge learning experience.
Yeah. Do they have mobile? Did you roll your desk from place to place? Is that how it works?
They did
That's
have the mobile desks.
yes.
Most of my time I was there, I was just in the Valve Index hardware department because I was working really closely with the engineers that were building the controllers themselves, and that was so amazing. Getting to be with all these super cool people that were like building the controllers, and every couple of weeks they would give me a new prototype, and I would get to use it.
Every couple of weeks, get a new prototype. So after DK1, what was your next VR hardware after that?
I think just DK2. I was a diehard VR fan kind of instantly, so I was getting all the new headsets and developing with them.
Did you get a Vive from Valve? Did they supply you one? How did that?
Um, it actually took me a bit to get a Vive because I was a high schooler. I wasn't really a established developer. It was not exactly who they were looking for to give dev kits out to, but I did eventually get a dev kit again through my dad.
Hmm. Interesting. So Dad is the secret hero in this
Hmm.
journey, right?
Absolutely.
In making sure you at least put the headset on. Was there any magic for? I'm imagining the dads out there trying to impart the knowledge that your dad apparently imparted on you. Was there any magic words he said to get you hooked? What was what
Um,
made it work for you? What why did it take?
Not really. He really had more of a hands-off approach. He just supported me. Um, Obviously, he supported me because he loves computer programming and he loved that I was getting into it in game development in particular. Um, but I was the one coming to him and saying, "I want to learn Unity. How do I start using Unity?" And he was like, he just pointed me at some tutorials. He did the same thing with Blender, pointing me at some good Blender tutorials, and then he sort of just let me do my thing. And that was great because I'm a great self learner.
Awesome. What sort of, can I ask whether your education was traditional outside of this development journey? Because there's the other flip side of that is I've asked sort of like the dad perspective on it, but there's also your contemporaries, people who are your age or even younger, who are going to be like intimidated by the fact that you've got several games under your belt already at this age, and like, how can I ever hope to do something of this scale this quickly?
Hmm.
And I want to get that perspective too of just are there any tips that you would have for younger people in sort of where they would start today right now? Is it go in that same direction, go follow some Unity tutorials and get started, or is there anything new that you would recommend?
Yeah, pretty much. When I started, I was just a high school student, doing it in my spare time, and I did that throughout high school. It was just something that I dedicated all my free hours to because I love doing it so much. Um, I will say I've been in a very fortunate situation this entire time with who my dad is, with all the connections that he has. I think that was one of the biggest factors in letting me um, like break into VR development at such a young age because of how he could support me.
Yeah, good to know. And did you do college as well?
Yeah, or no, I did like one semester of college, and I was kind of miserable there. The game design program I went to UC Santa Cruz, which does have a pretty good game design program. But you know how college is; you have to take a lot of fundamental courses before you can get into the more interesting stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do like 3 years of like the most basic like computer programming courses just to get to be able to make a game for school. So
Yeah.
I dropped out of college after just one semester and went and made Vertigo Remastered and then finished Vertigo 2. So yeah, since then I've just been working. So no college degree or anything. It's absolutely not needed in the games industry. They I don't think many um, companies will check for a degree if they're hiring you. They definitely look more to have you made a game, have you published a game. That's the
S-
big thing.
Yeah, and you've got some titles under your belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes that conversation go smoother. I think the missing the missing piece I'd want to understand is what do you think the next 20 years look like for you in this industry? Do you see skills that you need to add? Are there ones that you want to target? Do you see yourself one day working with a large team, or is it going to be you solo for the duration of your career?
Yeah, I don't know what the next 20 years is going to look like. Like I've said, I'm a big PC VR fan, and it really seems like the direction VR is heading is definitively mobile VR. So I'm not super happy with that. And one of the games that I'm prototyping right now is actually a pancake game, not a VR game. So one of my next projects may not be VR. But I still have a huge soft spot in my heart for VR games, and I am working on several VR games. I've joined some teams that are working on Quest games, so this is not the end of my VR output. So don't worry about
Yeah, I could feel I feel like you recognize their hearts sinking out there in the audience as they're watching this, and
it.
at
Yeah,
least gave them hope at the end of
no,
that.
don't worry.
Um, do you recognize the sort of like um Half-Life stand-in place that your project holds for people, like people that are um, desperate for the kind of content that you're providing, and you're providing it. What were you surprised? How can you quantify Vertigo 2 sales? You be as specific or non-specific as you want there, but I want to understand. Did you know that you were filling a niche, and do you realize, like, did you reach the number of people you needed to keep yourself going?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into the making the Half-Life genre. As I think I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I had not played Half-Life when I made Vertigo, and then everybody was like, "This is like Half-Life. This is awesome." So I went and I played Half-Life, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I made a Half-Life spiritual successor without noticing it." But it turns out that there is a huge market for that because they kind of don't make games like that anymore, and so many people love that kind of game. So I'm really happy that I've been able to kind of fill that hole in the games industry, because I also love that kind of game.
And then I see it's overwhelmingly positive over the lifetime of it. How did you feel seeing that rating? And when you started seeing the sales come in, was it gratifying to see it actually find its market? Tell me about sort of like what did it feel like on launch day, and when you see those reviews start giving a verdict on your work.
I care a lot about Steam reviews. I think they're a great indicator of a game's popularity overall. Except for review bombs or whatever, which can skew the results. So yeah, it really made me proud to see that it had got such good reviews on there. And I just realized I forgot to answer the other part of your question, but Vertigo 2 has sold enough copies to keep me going for quite a long time. So I'm doing great on the funding front.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah, tell me what it feels like on launch day specifically. How many years did you spend building Vertigo 2? And then I think it launched on March 30th, 2023. What was it like when you released Vertigo 2 on that day, and knowing that you're going for that market? Recall that day for me in as much detail as you can.
Yeah, sure. Well, that'll be hard. Launch day is kind of a blur, and I think a lot of game developers will tell you that because you're so busy, you don't really have time to enjoy it until later. You're making sure that the build is good, there's no bugs. Once it releases, people instantly start finding bugs because thousands of people are suddenly playing your game, which is way more than you had playtesters. So there's patches that need to come out. It's a very stressful time, is what I'll say. But my favorite part of releasing a game is going on YouTube and typing in Vertigo 2 and getting to watch people play through it for the first time. I've spent many hours watching people's playthroughs and seeing what I can learn from them. It's like a whole nother round of playtesting, really.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. I want to ask one question about AI tooling. Have you used any AI tools, and what do you think their roles are going to be in your work going into the future? Since I think that's another question some people will probably have in the back of their minds, given that you've got these significant works under your belt and you've got such a long career ahead of you. I'd be curious what your particular outlook is on that particular genre of tool.
Yeah, I'm pretty negative on AI. I gotta be honest. I was really enthusiastic about it before this kind of current wave has popped off. But it seems to me to more resemble a tech bubble like the metaverse or cryptocurrency much more strongly than it resembles true technological innovation. We're seeing these large language models kind of hit a barrier where they're not continuing to get better, even as more training data is fed to them. We're seeing a lot of unethical use of AI, kind of poisoning the well of the internet, filling it with slop. And all of the AI content in games that I've seen has been equally kind of sloppy. It's kind of a stand-in for paying artists and professionals like me to create something meaningful.
I really love this interview. It feels really genuine. I talk to PR people, talk to executives, and when you talk to those folks, you get disconnected from the art.
Mm-hmm.
And given that you've got so many disciplines under your belt of creating art, I'm wondering if you could somehow explain how hard it is to make a game to that audience out there, right? Like, how many hours are we talking? What are do you have a social life that you've been able to maintain parallel to actually making games? Tell me about if there's been any sacrifices here in getting to where you are and doing what you do.
Yeah, it's so many thousands of hours to make a game, especially if you're doing it by yourself like me. That's the cost of not having a team. The benefit, obviously, is that you don't have to pay a team, and I get to keep all the money, which means it's a lot cheaper to operate Zulubo Productions than it is to operate any other game studio. But yeah, it's many thousands of hours of work. I do actually have a better social life now than I used to. I recently moved to the East Coast, and I've been spending a lot more time offline. Going outside, touching grass, making new friends. So that's been great. I feel like I have a really good work life balance at the moment, and I'm quite happy with where my life is at.
What is your typical work setup? Are you working directly in headset, using a virtual display, using a big monitor? What's your rig, and how do you actually get your work done?
Yeah, I've got. I can even send you a picture of my setup. I've got two monitors, one like really big one more normal sized one. I usually have my headset, beside my desk. I should think about like using a virtual headset because I feel like a lot of people do use those and that would help a lot. But I just, I'm hot swapping in and out of the headset all day. Oh, I do have in Vertigo 2, I have like a non VR mode where you just like walk around with a first person controller, which is like pancake controls, which is good for, testing whether, the level looks right or enemy behavior and stuff. But I do, have to go in headset if I'm going to be testing VR specific mechanics.
So, really appreciate this conversation today. I think I'm nearing the end of the really killer questions in the back of my head. I want to understand if you've got anything else about your work that you think would help people understand where you're going, what your intentions are, and the challenge of doing what you've done. Are there any big pieces of this that we haven't talked about?
Um, I do what I do because I enjoy doing it. It's really as simple as that. I I'm happy making games. I love making games. It uh, Artistic expression is like what life is all about for me, and making games has let me express myself in so many different ways through so many different disciplines. Um, yeah, it's just a joy to work on games.
Yeah, it's obvious, right? Like that's a very obvious answer. I do it because I
Yeah.
love it. I'm trying to understand the reactions that you see from gamers. You talked about going to YouTube and seeing these playthroughs. You're learning what you can do better, but are you also laughing when you see that they reacted? Like, are you feeding off of that? Is that a big part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of games is, knowing that they're being played by people, that people are enjoying them, that people are being entertained by them, are, getting to have fun and play.
Yeah, one of my earliest interviews in the VR space, I was talking to gosh, a couple different people. I think it was USC and Stanford and NASA. Those were in my first articles in like 2012, 2013, right in the time that you're getting your DK1. And hearing these experts say the platform of choice for kids these days is video games. And here I am talking to a developer who has had to do it himself, basically holding together like you're a tentpole production for PC VR headsets, right? Your work stands on its own, I think, when it comes to the PC market of doing this on your own and doing so many different pieces of the work. So, one of the things I wanted to get out of this conversation today is showing some of your previous trailers so that people could see Vertigo Remastered around 2020, where you were in your artistic styles and your creativity back then, and then show the trailer for Vertigo 2. Both of these you shared with us in our showcases, and thank you for that. And then we've got the latest one is wildly cool, and you're doing more stuff with this latest trailer where people can go check out as soon as it's live on your website with some art as part of the package that I think is going to have to reach people. It's so important to me to try to humanize development, to close this gap between uh, grouchy, loud gamers out there who feel entitled to the work of these artists and make them realize that you're a human, right? You're an artist and a person who's trying to make art, and you don't give an overwhelmingly positive game just because you're a human. You don't give it a 10 out of 10 just because you're a human. It's the execution of what you're doing that is so key to those reviews. But I also need to just respect, like, how do you feel when you see review bombs and stuff like that as a creator yourself? And how do you feel about those people that don't see the artistry behind the work? Like, do you think people need to have a better eye towards intent?
um, I've been lucky to not be on the receiving end of very much online harassment. I've never had any review bombs for my games or any kind of targeted harassment campaigns at all, really. Which I think is probably because I'm a pretty unoffensive online presence, and my games are fun. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of haters out there. But yeah, it is really rough. It's just how the internet works. Unfortunately, is that if a mob organizes, they can really ruin your day.
I just wanted to say that, like, it's an elephant in the room, and I understand that you haven't experienced this, and I want to. It's part of this conversation to me of humanizing VR development. So I'm so appreciative you appeared in here as your strange avatar that you tried to. Uh, I appreciate that he tried to go. We've had a couple people come into the studio and use our studio while trying to basically hack Meta's avatars into the weirdest shape as possible
Oh,
because
see, that's what I
it's
wanted to do.
yeah.
I need to look into that.
Well, they've reduced it so you can't really, you can't
Mhm.
appear as a giant human body part. And like I get that, but it's also indicative of the way these platforms are trying to restrict what you can do for other purposes than just creativity, right? Like you're a creative person and you were given a canvas in front of you and you're like, I'm gonna make this canvas go weird, right? Like, and it seems like you do that a little bit with your VR games as well.
Yeah,
And I just love that story of you demonstrating with your avatar that you're trying to go outside the box. Vertigo games are outside the box. You've honed this path for yourself on PC VR when so many others have had to leave it behind. And knowing that you've basically got a blank check, it sounds like, to do what you want next. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah, for the time being,
Yeah.
I'm sustainable making games as I am right now.
All right. Well, please keep up with those VR prototypes. I know the people out there are going to be begging for them. They're also going to be, that you said 4 words about your secret unannounced projects at Valve, but those are the 4 words that mattered to a bunch of people out there in the audience. I know that they remembered those words.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think any of the like secret stuff I worked on is going to see the light of day, which
Oh.
is just how Valve works, sadly.
Yeah, well, we're all in anticipation of Valve's next drop. We do our VR download, our VR Games Cast, where we cover all the trends in personal computing and VR gaming. And we understand why people play PC VR, why people love it so much. And your games are tentpole productions for so many people out there. So thank you for the time going through this with us. Make sure you stay tuned for the latest trailer from Zach in our showcase. We'll show the first 2 trailers, I think probably after we finish this interview, so that you can use those as points of comparison for the new trailer, and you can start to see visually for yourself some of that development journey. Of course, you can go find Vertigo Remastered over on Steam, and you can find Vertigo 2 both on Steam and PSVR 2 as well, right?
That's right.
And then, of course, stay tuned for the latest reveal. Go check out, we want to call out your website and where people can find more information.
Yeah, zulubo.com/vertigo2 will have, it has Vertigo 2 there right now, but after the reveal, it will also have the new thing on it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for trusting us with your work. We'll try not to have any technical hiccups today, but it is hard on our side of things putting together all this randomness, right? But you're so typical and not typical of the VR market. There are a lot of people, indie devs, single person teams, who just believe that VR headsets are going to be the future, and they finding a couple random people out there on the internet to pull together a coalition, put together a demo, get it out to people. We've got people like Aerospace Defender that have come to our showcase with their hand tracking missile defense type game. We've got a lot of really, really cool projects that we've seen develop over time. And it's so great to get your voice out in front of that audience so that they can see someone who's had, or I guess I call it, an enormous success on PC VR, despite what you described, right? The market being pushed towards standalone, and you're planting a flag saying, this is actually what's cool to me, and I'm going to deliver on it. So I think I'm speaking for a lot of people out there who gave you positive reviews, and just they're probably expressing their thanks for actually seeing through to create that work. And hopefully this enlightened some people out there on just why artists build what they do in VR, how hard it is to do that. And we'll see you in the future. Thank you so much, Zach, for joining us, and stay tuned for the rest of the showcase.
Yeah, you're too kind. Thanks for the interview. I haven't gotten to do one for a long time. Like I said, I've kind of been offline and touching grass recently. It's cool to jump back into the world of VR,
Yeah, well,
world of VR.
I ended an article the other day with the same sort of advice. VR is amazing, but make sure you balance it with touching grass. So thank you for that as well, and we'll see you in the future. Thank you.
Is that you, Brian? Oh, you're not Brian.
reactor core. You saw the path is sealed.
This will be the first time ever, but I'm actually happy to see a sentient alien. I thought I was trapped in here all by myself.
I suppose. Torture works too, though. It's fun to make organic beings suffer. No offense.